I spent last New Year's Eve at home, getting ready for a virtual countdown party with some friends. Around 11:30, I went to the bathroom to freshen up. As I stood in front of the mirror, I noticed something strange. My reflection didn't look quite right. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But then, as I turned to grab a towel, I saw it out of the corner of my eye. My reflection blinked, even though I hadn't. My heart started pounding. I waved my hand in front of the mirror, and everything seemed normal again. But when I looked closer, the reflection was grinning. A wide, toothy grin that wasn't mine. I backed out of the bathroom and shut the door, but a few minutes later I heard a faint tapping from the other side. It wasn't until midnight, during the countdown, that the lights flickered, and I heard my own voice whisper, "Let me out." When I opened the door, the mirror was completely shattered, shards scattered across the sink. To this day, I can't look into a mirror on New Year's Eve without remembering that grin. We were at a cabin in the middle of nowhere, ringing in the new year with a small group of friends. The Wi-Fi was spotty, so we decided to stream a countdown video on someone's downloaded playlist. At first, it was fun, laughing, drinking, and cheering. But as the countdown hit 10, something weird happened. The screen flickered and the countdown numbers started to glitch. Instead of 9, it showed some random symbols, and by the time it hit 5, the screen turned black. Suddenly, we heard a low, distorted voice come from the speaker. It wasn't part of the video. It said, "Are you ready?" We laughed it off as a prank, but then the voice said one of our names. Dead silence fell over the room. Then another name and another, until it had called out everyone in the group. The clock struck midnight, and the TV screen turned back on. The countdown video was playing again, but this time, the footage showed us sitting in the cabin, exactly as we were in that moment. Except, behind us in the video, there was someone standing in the shadows. We turned around, but no one was there. We left the cabin that night and never went back. Last New Year's Eve, I was walking home from work when I found a fancy black envelope lying on the sidewalk. Inside was a handwritten invitation to a private New Year's party at an address I didn't recognize. It even had my name on it, but I had no idea who sent it. I was curious, so I decided to check it out. The address led to a large old house on the outskirts of town. The lights inside were warm and inviting, and I could hear faint music playing. I knocked on the door, and a man in a vintage suit answered. He smiled and said, "We've been waiting for you." The party was strange. Everyone was dressed in old-fashioned clothes like it was the 1920s, and no one seemed to know what year it actually was. When I asked, they just laughed and said, "You'll understand soon." I started to feel uneasy when I noticed a large clock on the wall. It wasn't counting down to midnight. It was counting down to 1 a.m. At 1 a.m., the music stopped, and everyone turned to face me. The host said, "You're the last one we needed." I ran out of the house, but when I looked back, the lights were off, and the house looked abandoned. Later, I found out the house had been empty for decades, but every year, people report seeing lights and hearing music on New Year's Eve. I've never been a big fan of New Year's Eve parties, but last year I decided to host one at my house. It wasn't a huge deal, just a few close friends, some snacks, and music to ring in the new year. Everything was going fine until we noticed something strange. Around 11:30, one of my friends, Mia, asked, "Hey, who's that guy?" I followed her gaze and froze. There was someone sitting on the couch, a man I didn't recognize. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, a gray suit that looked like it came straight out of the 1920s. His face was pale, and his eyes never blinked. Thinking he was a friend of a friend, I walked over and asked him who he was. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned his head slowly and smiled, too wide, with too many teeth. My friends laughed nervously, assuming it was some kind of prank, but the man just sat there, staring at the clock on the wall. As the countdown to midnight approached, the air in the room changed. It grew cold, and the music from the speakers started to distort, as if the house was groaning under some unseen pressure. One by one, my friends started complaining about headaches, and Mia swore she heard someone whispering her name. At 11:59, The man stood up. The room went completely silent, even though the music was still playing. He pointed at the clock and said, "The time is near." When the clock struck midnight, all the lights in the house went out. We heard a loud, bone-chilling scream, but no one could tell where it was coming from. When the lights came back on, the man was gone. But on the couch where he'd been sitting, there was a deep, charred imprint of his body burned into the fabric, as if he had been seared into it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.